So many of us consume on a daily basis books, audiobooks, podcasts, articles, you name it, and we don't actually remember very much of the information that was offered. So we end up consuming more and more information without retaining any of the value that was offered. So in this video, I'm going to give you a few tips on how to retain the information that you consume, particularly in books and audiobooks, so that you can actually maximize your learning. Okay, so the first one is to know why. Why do you want to read that book? Why do you want to listen to that book? Now, the approach would be actually different depending on your answer. If you want to read a book to get entertained, that's one thing. If you want to read a book to learn a specific skill or master something in particular, then it's a different way of reading. So this is exactly the starting point for you, is to know why you want to consume that particular information. The second tip is, before you start consuming the information, make sure that the source and the author of that article or book or piece of information is somebody who's credible, because you don't want to waste your time with material that is coming from people who don't have a solid baggage. And this is another way for you to help you filter the information coming your way. Because I know, for example, in some people's phones, I see them in my family, they check their phone all the time and they receive a huge amount of information on their WhatsApp. And I find it like they're always talking about, oh, you should read this and check this out and shit. But I'm like, no, I don't want to, because I don't know who's this person who's sending you this thing is. I have no idea who she is. So I need to make sure that the sources are credible. The third thing is to actually dedicate at least 15 minutes to 30 minutes a day to learning. You would actually schedule it in your calendar. That would be the time for you that you'll be sitting down and studying, basically. I wasn't sure to use the word studying, but like, yeah, it is actually studying, but studying actually makes people so uncomfortable, like they feel they're back in the classrooms, where studying is a good word because you're taking a step further with what you're reading. You're not just reading in a passive way, but you're actually studying it, so it's an active way. So if you want to retain that information, make sure it's a habit that you have in your calendar to be learning pretty much on a daily basis. The next one, which is a big one, but I know not so many of you are gonna do it, because it's kind of like you need to be disciplined. You need to have some sort of self-discipline, and that is to take notes. So whenever you hear something or read something, take notes. Taking notes actually helps you remember and retain that information that you're consuming, and also you're taking notes of the words that you're not understanding, or if you have any questions or thoughts, you're actually writing them down, because if you're not, chances are you will forget them. And the good thing about taking notes is that you can always go back to them and read them over and over again. And I remember I used to do that a lot, whereas I would go back to my notes and start reading them, and by repetition we get really good at what we want to do, right? Okay, the next tip is, before you close that book and you tell yourself you're done with it, sum it up. Just write down a short paragraph of the main takeaways of that book or that audiobook or that podcast. What exactly did you learn from it? This is a step that so many of us actually miss, because we're just thinking about the next thing, whereas I'm like, hey, slow down. What did you really get out of this YouTube video? What did you really get out of this podcast? What did you really get out of this article? We don't actually take the time to analyze or even to evaluate the quality of that content. So I urge you to really just sum it up, whether in your head or in writing, just to make sure you yourself have actually understood everything that's being said. And sometimes do not hesitate to go back and rewatch that video or reread that book if things are not completely clear to you. My next one is to share the information that you've read or consumed and explain it to other people. So teaching is one of the best ways to consolidate your knowledge and reinforce your learning. So talk to your friends about what you just learned, or maybe you can write a Facebook or Instagram post about it. Just let it out. And my final tip is to actually apply the learnings, right? If it's a particular skill that you want to learn, or a specific mindset shift or anything like that, definitely make it part of your habit for at least 21 days and see how it goes. If it's a skill, then definitely you need to practice, right? You can just learn from a book just like that. You need to practice. With that said, I don't actually recommend you reading things that you may actually need in the far future. I definitely recommend you to read and consume information for the things that you need right away. Because sometimes I hear people say, well, I'm reading this book, I'm gonna need it at some point in my business in like 3 years time. And I'm like, what's the point? Because things change and you're not really sure whether you're gonna use that book for later, or whether the lessons and the takeaways are still going to apply in 3 years time. Plus, you have to take care of your present now, like solve the current problems that you have and try to grow now. So learning is not about the quantity, it's really about the quality. I'd rather read like one book that will actually teach me a lot than reading like 15 books and not getting very much. You need to start thinking about reading and consuming information as a business activity, meaning every time you read or consume information, ask yourself, what is the ROI? In other words, what is the return on investment that I'm getting out of this information? Whether that is spiritually, whether that's in your career, in your business, with your family, relationships, etc. Alright guys, so tell me down below what other tips that you have that help you actually retain information and retain the value that you get out of books, articles, podcasts, and so on. Let me know if you have any other tips. I'd love to know, and I would love to apply them myself, right? If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to my channel and like the video if you liked it, share with your friends, and thank you so much for your support. As always, I love reading your comments and sweet messages, and I'll see you very soon. Bye!